Okay, welcome to the Monday Musings. Alright, so what was it? The end of June, I did a book review, Holy Daimon by Frata Acha. Still don't know how to pronounce his name. But somebody commented and spoke about what I mentioned. I mentioned something about my interpretation of the Holy Daimon, etc., etc., towards the end of the video, and asked me if I would speak a bit more about that. So this is what that video is about. All right. First, I just want to show you my Patreon stuff. Join me over on Patreon, where you will find all of my books, services, and courses in the shop, blog posts, and the various tiers which you can explore. You can get magical training in the Temple of the Horned Serpent First Degree, and joining as a free member gets you started with that. Or explore the Magical Journal and the Egregore Project. Hope to see you there. Okay, so this whole Holy Daimon or Holy Guardian Angel and such things. Now, what you'll find is a lot of people focus on the texts like Abramelin or Liber Samek from Crowley. That's kind of like the focus, because I think that's where a lot of people who go into, like, venture into ceremonial magic down the avenues of like Golden Dawn and Thelema and things like that. That's where they come across this concept of the Holy Guardian Angel, and then they get led to Liber Samek or Abramelin, the sacred magic of Abramelin the Mage, full title of the book. Anyway, now there's a lot of different ways you can go about actually doing this particular operation, this particular working, and there's a lot of terminology we can use which refers to the same thing, which if you've watched most of my videos, you'll know, when I talk about the Holy Guardian Angel, I personally talk or refer to the Personal Daimon, and what we're really talking about here is your own soul. But this can be interpreted in a more of a traditional witchcraft, folklore sort of aspect with the Fae Companion and things like that. And we may then come across terminology like the fetch. If you've read Robin Artisan's works, you'll probably come across the not really a split, but the definitions of the fetch beast and the fetch mate, which they kind of are referred to as two different things or two separate things, but they really are the same thing when you bring them together. And that's what we're talking about, is bringing things together, bringing them into union, parts of ourselves which we need to kind of unite in order to make ourselves whole, type of thing. So if we have a look at the various interpretations of the soul, you've got, in heathenry, you've got, they split the soul into 11 parts as far as I remember. But a lot of traditions focus a lot on the tripartite aspect of this, and this comes hand in hand with kind of like the tripartite cosmology, and that's, we can cover Celtic spirituality or Druidry with Lancian Sky. We can have a look at the three worlds of upper, middle, and lower. So it kind of ties in quite nicely with that ideology. But mostly, a lot of people will talk about three parts to the soul. And even if you go into Kabbalah, which is kind of like my go-to in this particular aspect of talking about this topic of the soul itself, we talk about three parts, which are the nefesh, the ruach, and the neshama, which are the lower, middle, and higher self. But even within that terminology, if you go into Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism, there are actually 3, 4, 5, 6 parts of the soul. So there is also the guf, which is the physical body. and that's considered to be part of the entire being, the entire soul of the person. And then you've got the nefesh, the ruach, the neshama, and the neshama. Did I say 6? Yeah, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, six parts. So you've got the neshama, and then you've got the chia and the yechida, which are then above the higher self. And it kind of, if you put this onto a glyph of the tree of life, for instance, then those three, the top, the neshama, chia, and yechida make up the supernal triad at the top of bina, chokma, and keta. And then the ruach kind of makes up the middle portion, and then we've got the nefesh, which makes up yesod, and then we've got the guf, which is the physical body, the malkut, the kingdom, the foundation, and things like that. So yeah, anyway, but in relation to this idea of the 3 parts of the soul, the lower, the middle, the higher, okay, simple terminology, lower, middle, higher. Now, it doesn't mean that the lower self is lesser than the higher self. It really just means that it just has a different function. It's just a different part of who we are. Just like your right hand is not lesser than your left hand. They're both hands, they have different functions. Or your right hand is not lesser than your left foot. They have completely different functions, type of thing. So, don't think of this lesser and higher thing as being this kind of power dynamic or power hierarchy or anything like that. So without getting too much into the concept of the soul itself and these 3 parts specifically, what we find is a lot of people go with the idea of just the holy guardian angel. This is the pursuit. The whole reason for doing this is to gain knowledge and conversation with the holy guardian angel, or the holy daimon, or the personal daimon, or the fetch mate, or whatever terminology we use. Okay, I'm going to stick to holy guardian angel in the rest of this video because I think that's probably the term that most people would recognize. So this is the goal. And it is, if you go into Thelema, this is the goal of, apart from then going and connecting with the divine, the all, the infinite and things like that, the goal is, everything you're doing is towards this idea of knowledge and conversation with the Holy Guardian Angel. Now, when we think of the Holy Guardian Angel, it's this being which is separate from us. Some people do have the concept that it is separate from us. It's a different entity. It's completely separated. It's individual from us. My understanding of this is that it is part of our soul. And what happens is we have various different parts of our soul that during or through the process of this pursuit, we bring all of those parts together and we unite them and bring them into a whole, and therefore we become a whole being, and that's kind of like the goal, the thing we're aiming for, the great work, as some people call it. So therefore we keep focusing on this aspect of the Holy Guardian Angel. Now, when you're pursuing this type of work, there's something you need to be aware of, and I think this is where a lot of people kind of fail in this pursuit itself. If you are following a very specific system like Thelema or Golden Dawn, you're working specifically through something like Abramelin, then you are, if you are going through it particularly and step by step and not missing anything, and you're properly studying what you're actually working with, you're going to find different parts to this which a lot of people tend to miss, and I think that's why they actually fail in this whole thing. But as I said, if you're going through a specific system like Thelema, you are probably going to be guided by somebody else. You're going to have a teacher, you're going to have a guide, you're going to have a mentor, somebody there who can say, now do this, now do this, now do this, step by step, going through the process, okay? And what people, I think, personally, what I think people miss is that this Holy Guardian Angel is not just the only aspect or part of the soul which we need to bring into union. We have, and I do forget the terminology that was used in Abramelin and all other such works, but we have what is usually referred to as this. It's usually actually referred to kind of almost like the Christian interpretation of a demonic force. It's kind of the lower, the lesser, the evil aspect of ourselves, and then we have the Holy Guardian Angel, which is the positive, the light, the good part of ourselves, which I completely and utterly reject that idea. We have the lower part of ourselves, which is not lesser, it is not evil, it is part of us, okay? And we have this higher aspect of ourselves. So we have the lower and we have the higher, the nefesh and the neshima, right? Or the fetch beast and the fetch mate. This is my interpretation, the way I refer to these things. And you'll find this in Abramelin. It talks about I can't remember the terminology specifically. Sorry, I should have checked before doing the video, I suppose. But it talks about this lower or lesser or a demonic kind of entity that we connect with during the process of doing the operation itself, doing the working. We connect with this, and then we connect with the Holy Guardian Angel. All right, so you'll find this in the PGM. It talks about this lower daimonic force or daimonic force before you connect with that before you connect with the higher or the holy daimon. So you've got the lower, and then you've got the higher or the upper. That's very important. But people go straight to the upper, and they completely and utterly forget about everything that's kind of the process before getting there. And because they haven't, it comes back to foundational work. You've got to do the foundational work. Meet what I refer to as your fetch beast. Meet your fetch beast. Awaken the dragon within you, or the serpent within you, and ride that serpent or dragon up, and take the fetch beast with you. Sorry if there's noise outside. There's a lot of activity outside today. Ride that dragon or that serpent up with your fetch beast, and then come into union or come into knowledge and conversation with your personal or your fetch mate or your holy guardian angel or whatever. Then what happens is once you have knowledge of these things, you have conversation with these things, you are interacting with them, then they start to come into union. And then once that's happened, that's the beginning stage of the whole thing. So you don't just get knowledge and conversation with your holy guardian angel and then that's it. That's just the beginning, all right? And then you start going through a whole process that the holy guardian angel takes you through. I don't think that can particularly be taught, spoken about, referenced, because it's a years long process, and it gets very personal. It's between you and your own soul. So it's going to be very, very different for everybody. But this is I think this is the parts that people kind of miss. There's a connection with something, some entity, with some being, some part of you, some part of your soul, which is considered a lower aspect, all right? Then there's the part which is the higher aspect, and you bring all of these parts into union. Then, once you've got the knowledge of these parts, once you are conversing with these parts, then you start working with them, and that's, as I said, a whole long process. But there's also the familiars. If you go through or you read through Abramelin itself, and this is the text that I worked through. What was that? About 15 years ago, or something like that. That's the text that I worked through and used in my own pursuit for this. And since then, I learned a whole load of stuff that I could have done instead. But that's why I'm on here now. If you read through the text, it'll mention this lower aspect, or mention the Holy Guardian Angel. Then once you've got that knowledge and conversation, then you ask for your familiars, and it should, in that text at least, it is 4. And I have found it kind of relates to 4 stages of the day within a 24-hour period. So like 6 to noon, noon to 6 p.m., 6 p.m. to midnight, midnight to 6 a.m., and then rotate. So the idea is that you have these 4 familiars which are given to you, and you work with them through these 4 stages of this 24-hour period. But I've also found that they relate to the 4 elements. They also relate to the 4 seasons, the 4 Sabbats, the cross-quarter days, being Imbolg, Beltane, Lunasa or Lammas, and Samhain. So I kind of relate them to that as well. You can relate them to the equinoxes and solstices instead of those cross-quarter days if you want to, but it's kind of like the 4 stages of the day, the 4 stages of the season, the year, the wheel of the year, and the 4 elements. And so you can actually place these 4 familiars on your compass, for example. And I find that this is, again, it's part of your soul. It's part of who you are when you were born. This is parts that were given to you, okay? And this is part of the process of why we're here and why we are doing what we're doing, specifically in the spiritual aspect and within magic, is to create union with all these different parts of the soul which have been fragmented and split, and bring them back together. And then we become a whole being, a whole person. And that's what I believe to be the case. And I will say that this is my own personal interpretation and conclusions that I've come to. There might be some things that some people disagree with, and some things that they also agree with. And that's absolutely fine. You've got to come to your own conclusions at the end of the day. But I was asked to just kind of clarify this a bit more, and speak about it specifically, so that's what I've done. And yeah, maybe in 10 years' time I'll do it again and have a completely different view on the whole thing. Quite likely. But yeah, anyway, so that's my interpretation of that particular topic, and I hope it made some sense. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers, bye-bye.